Virtual summits are the most powerful online marketing tool available to grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and create an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. If you are ready to take your summit to the next level, then tune into the Virtual Summit Podcast with Dr. Mark T. Wade.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark T. Wade, founder of Virtual Summit Software and creator of the One Day Summit Formula. And I'm on a mission to help you, the summit host, get your summit out to the world in a powerful and impactful way. So let's get started. We are drawing the line here. No more crappy summits. With the information in this episode, you will know exactly how to create a binge-worthy summit and never neglect this important aspect of your summit ever again. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Dr. Mark T. Wade, founder of Virtual Summit Software, creator of the One Day Summit, and your host here on the Virtual Summit Podcast. So before we jump in, I want to make sure you head over to the show notes at podcast.virtualsummits.com/057 to get all the information we're going to be talking about here. Additionally, we have a lot of amazing resources over there at virtualsummits.com. You can get free resources on how to build a one-day summit, a multi-day summit. You can also get information on how to run an interview with impact, as well as the summit story arc. So it's time to have a tough love conversation. You all know I love you, and I want nothing but success for you and for you to get your message out to the world. But there's a huge, fat, nasty elephant sitting in the room. And it's not just affecting your summit. It's affecting my summits and really everyone's summits. It's a simple fact that most of the virtual summits being put out today really suck. I know. Please don't hate me. I told you we need to have some tough love. But you also know I'm not going to leave you there. I'm going to give you a very specific way, not only to make sure your summits don't suck, but also that they're so good that you become the example of how someone should run a summit. We good with that? Okay. In order to get to that point, we have to go through some rather uncomfortable points and address that big old elephant that's sitting there in between us on the couch. And, he really needs a shower too. So right now, I have made it my mission to raise the standard of virtual summits. I'm going to ensure that my summits from this point forward, and anyone who's coaching with me or looking to me for advice, that all of our summits are at a completely higher level. If we do that, not only are we going to be doing our audience a better service, but also we're going to be setting the standard for summits. And our summits will blow every other summit out of the water. If you're with me on this and ready to join me on this mission to raise the status of our summits, then I want you to be sure to sign up for the free training over at summitstoryarc.com. Go there, summitstoryarc.com. Get the full training on this topic. For today, I'm going to open Pandora's box and expose you to the dark underbelly of summits. Why so many summit hosts are not experiencing the success that they want, and what's causing a ripple effect throughout the summit community with attendees and speakers taking negative stances towards summits. It's so blatantly obvious, but completely 100% ignored by most summit hosts. Of course, it's not on purpose. It's just from a lack of knowledge, and from here forward, we're going to ensure you are not one of the summit hosts ignoring it. The one aspect of 90% of all summits that are being ignored is the summit sessions. Now, this has a two-part problem, really. The bigger, more fundamental problem is the fact that most summit interviews really just flat out suck. I know, it hurts to hear. Trust me, I'm in the same boat. Looking back at some of my earlier and even some of my more recent summits, my interviews were straight up boring. It's the truth, and honestly, it's not your fault, but regardless, we can't ignore it. It's time to up-level your summit game and interview like a pro. No one wants to listen to 20 to 30 hours of boring interviews. The summit interview is one of the most important aspects of your summit, and now you can get some free training over at interviewlikeapro.com. That's interviewlikeapro.com. Your audience will thank you and your speakers will love you. Let's commit to no more boring interviews. It's time to interview with impact. The summit interviews are boring, and no one wants to listen to 20 to 30 hours of boring interviews. Just think of yourself, the last summit you were on. Did you see some boring interviews? Yes, of course you did. Because none of us has had any official training on how to perform an impactful summit interview. Now, I went through this aspect of the problem in episode 51 of the Virtual Summit podcast, Interview with Impact. Please check it out and be sure to check out our free training series, How to Interview Like a Pro. That's such a crucial aspect to increasing the quality of summits across the board, and really, there is no excuse on not raising the standard. But for today, we're going to look at the summit session from a higher perspective. We're going to look at them from a summit overview perspective. Most summit hosts take the interviews and they put the most important, the anchors or featured speakers first, and then just scatter the rest throughout without any real thoughts to how they should be organized. This is a huge mistake. And this is honestly one of the main reasons your attendees are not finishing the whole summit. 1, the interviews are so boring. And 2, it's like watching a movie with all the scenes mixed up. No one wants to watch that. We need to start thinking of our summits as a story, like a Netflix series or a book. Each day is a chapter, and each session is a scene in that story. This is where the summit story arc becomes so vital to the success of your summit. When we take the time to plan that summit out, like I'm going to teach you today, then it becomes a story with a journey that is entertaining and intriguing, that our audience not only completes, but they enjoy, share, and promote. Ultimately, we need to think of our summits with these aspects. The mission, which is how our audience will know if they've succeeded or not at the end of the summit. The story, which is the journey we're taking our audience on with our summit. The adventure or experience, this is the engagement we will be providing to our audience, which is currently not being done by most summits. And finally, using the above as the guide for our topic selections, which creates the sessions, which then tells us the right speakers to choose. We've been choosing speakers based on their list size or their names. When we follow this format, we now build a story or a journey that our audience wants to participate in. And it also means we don't need nearly as many speakers. Yay! Now, this is kind of a 3-part series here that I'm going to be talking about. In this episode, we're covering the summit story arc. But coming out soon will be the summit action arc episode, which shows you how to create engagement by turning your summit into an edutainment event. And then the summit storyboard template. That episode will follow that, showing you how to successfully map out your summit and the sessions to create this impactful and powerful virtual summit. So let's jump into it. We need to first start off by understanding what it is the true purpose of our summit. Now, most people would say, to generate audience and leads. That's not the purpose of your summit. That's one of the outcomes of your summit. The purpose of your summit is to take your audience from one place to another higher, more enlightened or inspired place through a journey. It's important to start thinking of your summit as a story. What's the story that you're trying to tell? What's the mission of your summit? Ultimately, you want your audience to believe something or have the same perspective as you, whatever that might be. Now, you can't change a person's perspective from disbelief to belief in a single session. Let that sink in. It takes a journey to break a belief and reinstall a new perspective. So we need to build a journey. We need to use our summit to tell a story. So after we identify the purpose of our summit, the mission, we need to look at the characters. We have the hero, who is your audience. We have the guide, who is most likely you, the host. And we have the mentors, which are your speakers. You should be looking at your summit from the eyes of all the characters. How do they fit together? How do they play into the story? What parts, what additional things do they do inside the story? It's time to up-level your summit game and interview like a pro. No one wants to listen to 20 to 30 hours of boring interviews. The summit interview is one of the most important aspects of your summit. And now you can get some free training over at interviewlikeapro.com. That's interviewlikeapro.com. Your audience will thank you and your speakers will love you. Let's commit to no more boring interviews. It's time to interview with impact. Ultimately, the hero is the most important character, but if we understand each role and factor that in, then the story continues to grow and evolve. Now, from the summit perspective, the easiest way to break this up is one, we look at it at the overarching mission, okay? That will create our theme. Then we break our summit into chapters or categories. This is most likely done by the day. Inside the chapters, we have the scenes, which are going to be your sessions. Understanding the purpose of the scene and what the action and emotion is that the scene needs to elicit help us determine what speaker is best for this scene. This is currently being done backwards. Most hosts are searching for speakers and then trying to fit them into their summit. Now that we've understood the correct framework to view our summit in, we need to address the summit story arc. This is the simplest, most effective formula for making an impactful story. The summit story arc is also incorporated into our interviews, which we discussed in depth inside the free summit interview training. You can find out more about that over at summitstoryarc.com. However, it is also a fundamental component of building the overall summit story. This ensures every session is impactful and every session moves our hero, your audience, further along the journey. Let's recover the summit story arc. It has 7 components that need to be accounted for. We need to set the scene, which is letting our audience know that what the world is currently like or how it's wrong. The problem, which is the main issue causing all the problems, the pain, the struggle. Then we have the contributing factors, which are the small factors that are contributing to the overall problem. We then have the climax, which is what the world will look like if nothing changes. So bad. Then the transformation, that's how we solve the problem. We then demonstrate proof so our audience knows they can solve the problem as well. And that is not only for the elite to benefit from. It's for them, for our audience. They can do it too. Finally, we have solution or next steps. So from the summit perspective, the solution and next steps should be hinting towards that item you will be offering to the audience after the journey or summit ends. Now, to dive deeper into this, you don't have to start the story off with the scene, like setting the scene. You can mix these up and start it off with the climax or the problem for dramatic effects. Just think of it as a story. Think of the movies you've watched. It really isn't as important as just ensuring you're at least aware of these components of the summit story arc and mapping your summit out with intention. I unfortunately don't have enough time on this episode to go super deep into the summit story arc, which is why I recommend you absolutely check out the training over at summitstoryarc.com to go deep into it. Now, let's look at how to plug this into your summit. Remember, you have the overall mission, which is the end goal of your summit. This is the perspective or belief that you want your audience to have at the end of the summit. Then you have the chapters, which are your days. If you're doing a one-day summit, it's even simpler. You have one chapter. You essentially just follow the summit story arc in one day. We do need to look at the summit from day one to done from the perspective of how are we moving the audience through that journey, but also looking at it from the day perspective as well. Meaning, if your audience only watches one day of your summit, or it is a one-day summit, then they could get the whole story there as well. Okay, we need to think of it like that. As you build out multiple days, then you're going to be explaining the story several times, but in different ways. There are several ways you can do this. They are all correct. Remember, I always say being creative is the best solution. However, you need to take that belief that you're trying to instill in your audience and determine what beliefs do you need to break or overcome for them to believe the new belief, the new perspective. Maybe it's just one, or maybe there's a couple. You would then identify the emotions or actions that you need your audience to have to take to break those beliefs. You want to place that throughout your summit, ensuring that you are addressing each of those every day of your summit. It's time to up-level your summit game and interview like a pro. No one wants to listen to 20 to 30 hours of boring interviews. The summit interview is one of the most important aspects of your summit. And now you can get some free training over at interviewlikeapro.com. That's interviewlikeapro.com. Your audience will thank you and your speakers will love you. Let's commit to no more boring interviews. It's time to interview with impact. This then takes you to the session level, and you can then identify the purposes of those sessions. What emotions do they need to elicit on that session? What actions do you need your audience to take on that session? By identifying that, you can then identify the purpose of the session. Now, you can determine the exact type of speaker you need to achieve that purpose. Also, knowing the purpose of the session, you can begin to add Netflix-style tactics to your summit. For example, at the end of each session, you should incorporate a cliffhanger about what the next session will be about. Think of the last TV show you watched. At the end of the show, they stopped the show in the middle of a tense or interesting scene, making you want to know what happens next. This is how they make shows binge-worthy, and how you can make it so that your audience is actually binge watching your summit. Also, every time you start the next episode series, in that series, we're talking Netflix here, there's always a recap, which brings you back up to speed on wherever you are in that series. What if each day of your summit, you had a recap of the previous days of the summit, so your audience can get caught up to speed and ready for that day's sessions? We're not just creating content here. We're not just educating. We need to be entertaining. We need to be edutaining. If we can do that, we can create a binge-worthy summit that will leave you with a result that summit hosts only dream of. Incorporating that into the summit story arc at the interview level ensures you will get that exact result. Can you start to see how much more effective this is going to be for your summit? Instead of just throwing a bunch of content and videos at your audience, you're telling a story. You're taking them on a journey that they're happy to go on and excited to participate in. This is how we incorporate summit psychology into our summit and how we tell a story to get a specific outcome, which increases the quality of your summit like 1,000 times. Now, this doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be like make it overly complicated, okay? It's actually in some ways makes it simpler. You no longer need to have 60 or 80 speakers on your summit. You can effectively tell a story with 10 or 20 speakers. Of course, you can still go for a mega summit as well, but now you do it in a different way. If you decide to run a 14-day summit, you now know that every day needs to tell a story or overcome a belief. And you now know how to map out that story from a daily perspective or chapter perspective, but also from the summit level or mission level perspective. This becomes a game changer for your summit and summits across the board. If we start to view them as stories, as journeys, like we do when we read a book or watch a movie or a series on Netflix, we change the game when it comes to summits. This is the mission I'm on. I'm dedicated to helping every host raise the game on their summit so we no longer have any boring or bombed summits. Now, this is just kind of dipping our toes into this concept. I would highly suggest jumping completely in and accessing the training over at summitstoryarc.com. Again, summitstoryarc.com to get the full training. Plus, this is just one aspect of the full overarching aspect of creating a binge-worthy, edutaining type of summit. Coming soon in the next episode, we'll be addressing the next two components of creating a binge-worthy summit. We will talk about the summit action arc, which creates the engagement aspect of your summit. Without engagement, we just have content. When we include specific and strategic engagement tactics, we create an unresistible binge-worthy summit. Then finally, we will cover the revolutionary summit storyboard template, which is how you can quickly and easily and effectively map out your binge-worthy summit. So stay tuned as I'm on a mission to change the game when it comes to virtual summits. No more boring, unengaged, crappy summits. Together, we're going to make hosting a summit the most game-changing strategy, period. Because your message matters and the world needs to hear it. Now let's go out and make an impact.
Thanks for listening. Now don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on the Virtual Summit podcast. Head over to the show notes to check out all the links and resources from this episode, and be sure to grab your free trial of the Virtual Summit software.
Now, I want to end this episode by saying to all the Summit hosts listening right now, I believe in you, and you can do this. Summits are by far one of the most powerful ways to quickly grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and most importantly, make an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. So don't get caught up in analysis paralysis, because the world needs to hear your message, and there are people who are waiting for you to help them. So just get started, because imperfect action is always better than no action. Thank you, and see you on the next episode.